Deep down within the Westfield Mall, there's a portal to another shopping centre, a secret vault which you can't set foot in. You've got to access its contents through a printed Bible, thousands of pages, a two-dimensional utopia. Argos was founded in 1973, and since then, its catalogue has been published twice every year, and it tells you what British people want, what we've aspired to, how we've lived, and how that has changed over time. It sold everything from taxidermy to calculators, pages and pages of them, lawnmowers in every colour, a lot of stretchy avant-garde gym equipment, a giant corkscrew endorsed by a famous surrealist called Arnie, who once suggested that we all sleep faster to get ahead. The catalogue has always been ambitious in its absurdism, selling us things that we didn't even need or want. Bored product development executives testing how far they could push it. That's Wolf off Gladiators in his first acting role. That's quite a weird scenario up there, isn't it, at the top with them and they're watching. And this is me and my sister, and the Argos catalogue was a significant part of our childhoods. We grew up in West Yorkshire, and on days when it was raining, that was most of the days in West Yorkshire, the Argos catalogue was like a window into an alternate reality. We could mentally try on all these different lifestyles. My mum didn't have a picture of us reading the Argos catalogue, so this is just one of us fishing. I was thinking recently about the fact that when we were looking at the Argos catalogue when we were little, it wasn't about owning the things. We'd make bootlegs, fakes of all the products. We'd look through the pages, and it was a creative act that we'd do together. And on the occasions where we did buy products from Argos and we saw them coming through over the counter, it was always an anticlimax, because you went from being this giant looking at these tiny thumbnail images, leafing through thousands of things all at once, to just being kid-sized again with one product in your hands. So suppose what I realised is that the Argos catalogue is almost like methadone for shoppers, in that it satisfies all the sensations that shopping can give you without you having to actually buy anything. It's so heavy that you feel like you've got a product in your hands. Maybe the catalogue is about the average weight of all the products it sells, so you don't need to own the things because it acts as a surrogate, a dummy, deliberately. And we start to notice some other anti-capitalist qualities about the catalogue if we think about this, and they're hidden, and we'll look at them in a minute. But first of all, I want to mention Argos Panoptes, a Greek mythological giant who came from Argos, the ancient Greek city. It's still around, and it was featured in Homer's Odyssey. And Argos Panoptes, like me and my sister, when we pore over the catalogue, feeling like giants, he was a giant and he could see everything, and he had 100 eyes and he never slept. The act of seeing, that was how he gained mastery over things. It wasn't about attacking. And that's the ethos of the Argos catalogue, that the catalogue itself is its own goal, and that seeing the things, that's a way of owning the things, and that to own is less somehow. And people are starting to realise this. If you look on eBay, you'll notice that the 1998 issue of the Argos catalogue, that's retailing at £42. More than most of the products in the Argos catalogue, especially at that time. In fact, the 1851 catalogue of the Great Exhibition, a really important historical moment, that's retailing at significantly less than the 2001 Argos catalogue. It's methadone for shopping. And in this way, it's anti-capitalist, but there are other countercultural messages hidden within the catalogue. Warnings about consumerism. I want to just compare it for a moment to the Whole Earth catalogue. A hippie countercultural book of tools from the late 60s to early 70s. It had a very specific audience. They'd use the word tools to mean products and articles about alternative ways of living, like how to set up your own eco-commune, how to apply the philosophical ideas of Buckminster Fuller, for example, permaculture, all kinds of ways of creating your own DIY utopia. We might think that that's the opposite of the Argos catalogue in a way, which is mainstream, which is about buying things for company profit. The Whole Earth catalogue features an image of the whole Earth on the front of it. That's probably why maybe it's called that. And the founder, Stuart Brand, he campaigned for NASA to release that image globally to show that there weren't really any boundaries between countries. We were all the same. Just he wanted us to be comforted by the fact that we were floating through infinite space in an unknown abyss on this big marble together. And the whole Earth Catalogue stopped being published regularly about the time the Argos Catalogue started being published in 1973. And what I think happened is that the whole Earth Catalogue, some of the writers defected and started writing for the Argos Catalogue, secretly weaving some of their hippie ideas into the Argos Catalogue in an attempt to reach a wider audience. We can see the demise of the whole Earth Catalogue here if we look at this review of a book on self-hypnotism. It says, one subject suggested herself larger breasts and got them. And they're expecting us to believe this kind of Buddhist boob job, that's possible. And equally ridiculous, here's Ken Kesey, the beat writer and contributor regularly to the whole Earth Catalogue, and he's advocating rubbing cornstarch on your balls for years. So it's time for the Argos Catalogue to step in and reach people in ways that are perhaps less off-putting. And while the whole Earth Catalogue, that was trying to fix the whole Earth, the Argos Catalogue, it gave people more achievable ambitions. Instead of trying to change the whole Earth, the Argos Catalogue says, why not start by changing your lampshade? And we can see the 1973 edition features a whole load of different lampshades and all kinds of other products, a bounty of what capitalism can offer, all this choice, an endless selection, just so long as the things that you want are orange. All kinds of orange, lampshades, chair, rugs. The 1973 edition was pretty much exclusively orange. So there's something subversive already going on here, isn't there, even at the start of its publication. It's saying that you can have any product imaginable, but it has to be this nauseating hue. And if we turn to the televisual entertainment section, there's a critique going on there too. Rather than featuring something that you might want to watch, they've chosen to air this documentary about a black sheep. The black sheep obviously being a symbol of alienation, being an outcast, yet also passively following the status quo. Dystopian, yet also mundane. Whilst they're trying to sell you the product, their main motive is to reveal some of the negative social impacts that its consumption might lead to. Here are some images from slightly later catalogues featuring more exotic species, the parrots, the flowers, the butterfly, brightly coloured things on black and white TVs. And there's nothing more depressing, really, is there, than seeing a vibrant parrot in black and white. So we see how the catalogue focuses on showing the limitations of technology to counterbalance the consumer's desire. And nature's being used all the time in the Argos Catalogue. In this orange interior, there's an orange fish, if you look closely, in a tank, but with just a couple of inches of water. While the whole Earth Catalogue might get a message about the environment across by presenting us with an article about ethical animal husbandry or permaculture or how we can save the Earth, it's far more shocking for me to see a fish struggling to respire as the water dries up in this orange mausoleum. And similarly, those decapitated horses on that bed there, and this girl who you'll notice is punching a friendly dog. There's always something sinister going on. Just as you sucked in, you're pushed back. And in the first few Argos catalogues, they couldn't really afford to hire proper models. But this was intentional, I think. They've used serial killers, sex offenders from a local prison. You might want the glasses. They look very fashionable. But there's also this message that's darker. They're coming to get you. And there's Rolf Harris advertising some children's toys. And there are other harrowing narratives such as here in the security section, where you'll see the atmospheric image of a looming intruder trying to get into the house. And the next page, this selection of saws. And then the suitcases. Clearly, this couple are not going on holiday with that much luggage, although I suppose it was before Ryanair, but now it had cost an arm and a leg. But also here, an arm and a leg, it is suggesting that they've chopped up the body, dismembered the limbs of the assailant with the saw, and that they're disposing of it in these cases. It's designed to address the problematic aspects of modern life, and perhaps to keep our consumerist desires in check. A lot of sinister dolls here, encapsulating some of the less positive aspects of the human condition. A lot of them mechanically wet themselves or incessantly cry. Here's one called Baby Fall Over, which falls over all the time as though in a drunken existential stupor. Depictions of human spillage. The idea that a kid would want a tiny fake replica of a child is disturbing for me, but some of these dolls even have their own babies attached to them. A parody of procreation. And this one, which is available in the 2017 catalogue, you can get it now, it actually smells like a real baby. And they've obviously gone and somehow they've harvested the smell of babies from maybe Homerton maternity ward or somewhere with a high concentration of newborns, and they've found a way of scraping the scent off the skin and containing it so that it can be added to this plastic doll to make it smell real. This is an ironing board. There is something horrifying about seeing children doing the most mundane part of your everyday life, rehearsing the mediocrity of adulthood or just parodying your own banality. The Argos Catalogue pioneered these sorts of toys. All kinds of fantastical toys could have been invented, but no. Most of the toys in the Argos Catalogue are themed around housework, DIY, and things that depress you as an adult. In the current issue of the catalogue, you'll find Baby's first smartphone and Baby's first 0 hours contract. Baby's first Sage accountancy software featuring this "shop till you drop" slogan, ominously. And here, costumes allowing future generations to dress up as precarious workers whose jobs have been threatened by government cuts. Police community support officer, NHS worker. A lot of the board games have this nihilistic tone. Stay alive. It's a really long game as well, and nothing really happens. It's a struggle and then it just ends, and there are no winners. And even the video gaming products, they're equally unappealing. This one, for example, it's just a dead pixel being juggled by a couple of hyphens, like a sentence that doesn't quite know how to finish. And look at this play tent. It could have been anything. A rocket to fly to the moon, a portal to another dimension, but no. Argos chose to thwart the kids' imaginations with a realistic representation of the ordinary 1970s caravan that they'll probably find themselves trapped in for a week each year. Parents arguing in a rainy, rundown British holiday resort. These are some Playmobil figurines, Playmobil sold in the Argos catalogue. We've got the hipster with his craft beer, the dropout on the park bench, alternative lifestyles and left-wing political positions that might have been prevalent in the Whole Earth catalogue. They're shown here in the Argos catalogue frequently through the figurines, except that when we see them in the Argos catalogue, they're often juxtaposed with the apparatus of state control. This Occupy anarchist, for example, is being kettled by police. Another thing the Argos catalogue questions is time. Time itself. About half the catalogue, if it isn't calculators, it's watches, and they always have different times on the clocks. Perhaps a nod to some of the New Age physics featured in the Whole Earth catalogue originally, which does away entirely with rational scientific concepts of space and time. And there are also a lot of carriage clocks in the Argos archives. They were a gift that you traditionally get when you retire. Cruel jokes, really. Objects which symbolically encapsulate all the hours that you've spent in the accounts department that you can't actually get back. And a stark reminder of the impending death that now awaits you. There's a surprising amount of nudity in the Argos catalogue, promoting this free love message similar to that of the Whole Earth catalogue hippies. And for me, this image from the 1980s, it mediates a transition from free love to free porn. And there wasn't even Photoshop at that time, so she had to expertly balance each of those bubbles strategically there. She had to be trained. And the catalogue frequently featured experimental sex toys like this, a liberated attitude to sexuality always being perpetuated. And the institution of marriage is critiqued through the facial expressions of many of the women in the wedding jewellery sections of the Argos catalogue, despondent expressions, facial manifestations of deep regret. You get the sense that she's a little bit sad and that she's giving up her freedom, and some of the jewellery goes one step further with the addition of these symbolic locks. But alternatives are suggested. For example, the Bionic Woman doll seen here in her boiler suit next to a Cindy ballerina. And the women's fashion in the Argos catalogue was often more avant-garde than it was in the Whole Earth catalogue. You can see this experimental headwear here, and this example of a woman in a fairly ordinary hat at Woodstock. Now, this is a big product available in the Argos catalogue currently. It's called Silly Sausage, and you can see the father in its YouTube advert. He's feeling quite threatened by it. Kids are meant to move the talking sausage up and down, shake it around, and the instructions on it are quite simple. It says, turn him on and obey his commands. Even the most clever psychology article in the Whole Earth catalogue wouldn't be able to bring together all of Freud's ideas in such an accessible way that even kids could understand. And from Freud to feminism to eco-activism, the Argos catalogue frequently aligns consumer capitalism with the demise of food. Whether it be the orange boxes that replaced food in the 70s catalogues, to this stale bread covered in too much lard like what the dinner ladies would do, or even protein powders suggesting that food might be replaced altogether. That's obviously come true now, as these whey protein powders are everywhere. The one on the left helps you lose weight, and the one on the right helps you gain weight. But they're made of the same thing. The Argos catalogue pioneered these products. Previously, if you remember the nursery rhyme Little Miss Muffet, whey was associated more with that character, a girl in a bonnet sitting on a tuffet eating her curds and whey. But the Argos catalogue successfully rebranded whey, which is the ultimate profit-generating product because it's a byproduct. It's essentially waste. But it's become valuable now. And this is what Little Miss Muffet would look like today. Now this guy, Stretch Armstrong, I really wanted this toy when I was a kid. He's been available at Argos in various designs for decades. And this year I realised while reading the catalogue that this stretchy character, he is in fact a prophetic premonition of the rise of Donald Trump. Perhaps created by the Whole Earth catalogue, a hippie in the 1960s, based on drug-induced visions of the future. And you can see they do look uncannily familiar, this weird orange man that becomes instantly, unexpectedly huge. Let's end where it all ends, in the toilet. Argos has a wide selection of aspirational toilet seats, it always has. Little shells embedded in them, scenes of New York. Seeing these reminded me of how my dad would spend hours reading the catalogue in the toilet, and it brought home my final thought, which is that the Argos catalogue is not really a publication meant to encourage you to accumulate stuff. The fact that it's used in households all over the country as a laxative, which helps you reject even your internal possessions, is definitive proof for me that the Argos catalogue is not a shopping catalogue at all. As all the evidence we've seen demonstrates, the Argos catalogue is secretly a radical countercultural manifesto.